Comic Book Savant, episode 464. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode, we're going to be doing a spoiler review of Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. This movie just dropped this past weekend. This is the eighth release from the DC Films, DC Extended Universe set of films that are kind of loosely interconnected with one another. But before I get into all that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. It's a great resource if you like the content that I do here and you want to find more similar content, more comic book related content. It's a great one-stop shop to go to kind of fill all those kind of needs. There are literally hundreds of different podcasts listed there for you to check out, including my own. So definitely, if you have a moment, stop by the Comics Podcast Network over at comicspodcast.com to check them out. And also on a side note, also check out my brother from another mother, Mr. Heath Holland, over at Serial at Midnight. You can find the website serialatmidnight.com, and also you can find the YouTube channel also over at youtube.com /Serial at Midnight. I have all the links on the website, and I'll have them listed in the description below for this particular episode as well, so you can check him out. He does great content. You hear him over here on our Spinner Rack Bros. I know we haven't done one in a while. We actually recently recorded one that'll be coming up, if I remember correctly. It'll be actually coming up the next episode after you hear this one. And we have more stuff in the works. We do also collab on his channel as well. For some videos, so you can we've done over the past couple of years, we've done, I don't know, like maybe about 6 or 8 videos on his channel, and we've done multiple podcasts on here, so definitely check those out. You can see me and hear us both over there, and you can hear us both here with the Spinner Rack Bros episode. So again, one should be coming up next week, and we have more coming in the works. So I hadn't forgot about you guys. I heard you loud and clear about you wanted to get more of us collabing, so I wanted to give him a shout out and remind you guys. Also, another thing I want to shout out before I get into the review is, if you haven't already, stop by. If you're on Facebook, if you are a listener of the podcast and you are on Facebook, I implore you to join our Facebook group. It's called the Savant Society. You can find it on Facebook. If you, it's facebook.com /groups /the Savant Society, all one word. You can request to join. As soon as I see your request, I will approve you. You can come in. I'll welcome you into the group, and then you can post, just basically introducing yourself to everybody. We have about 43 or so members. It's basically just an extension of what I promote here in the podcast. It's just real positive. A lot of cool individuals that we get to know each other, talk comics, the whole nine. It's a really great environment. I implore you guys, if you're already on Facebook and you want to just join a good comic community, stop by the Savant Society. Like I said, it's really cool. We're trying to grow it more in this upcoming year. It's grown, it's taken off, tremendously in the past year by me plugging it here, and you guys, coming in grows, and it has a mind of its own now. I don't, in the beginning, I kind of had a prompt conversation. Now so many people are comfortable, posting. I share, show ideas, and, we basically talk about different things in the world of comics without doing a bunch of spoilers or anything like that. We talk and give each other suggestions, things like that. It's just good, clean comics conversation. So definitely, if you have a moment, check that out. Now let's turn our attention to the meat of this episode, which is Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Got a chance to go see the movie on Sunday. As I'm recording this is Tuesday. I apologize about the delay on the episodes, but I've been rehauling. If you're on the Facebook group, I've talked about I've been since Christmas time. I've been totally like doing a overhaul on my whole office. Like pretty much at this point, uh, almost everything in the office is pretty much like I replaced about 85 to 90% of everything in my office when it comes to like recording equipment, software, like from nuts to bolts. Pretty much everything has almost been replaced, redone in some shape, form, or fashion in the office. And I had a mishap with some external hard drives that kind of threw me off and made me scramble to find files that I needed to produce episodes. So I got all that stuff done finally. So that's the reason why we had a slight delay and the episode wasn't out first thing this morning like normal. And I do apologize about that. But with all of that said, got a chance to see it Sunday. Um, was going to do the review before that kind of blew up in my face. So finally sitting down with this now, I'm glad I kind of had some extra time to kind of sort my thoughts out about the movie. But let's go over the particulars. It's directed by Kathy Yan. She's done a lot of like smaller films. This is her first kind of major big studio film. And it was written by Christina Hodson, which is she's written some kind of low budget horror movies from a couple of years ago. I think she did a movie in 2017, 2018, and maybe 2017, 2016. One was Shut In. I think it had Naomi Watts in it. And then she wrote Unforgettable. That was like a Rosario Dawson thriller movie as well. Both really didn't do much at the box office. Then she wrote Bumblebee, which did pretty well. It had a lot of critical success. I don't think it was a runaway hit, but I don't think it tanked at all. I really enjoyed the movie, and she wrote that. And she's been tapped to write quite a few movies. This is the first DC movie she was supposed to write. Then she's been announced to be the writer for the Batgirl movie that they're going to do, as well as they recently announced her as doing a rewrite on a Flash script because they're finally setting a release date and pushing forward with the Flash movie. And so they announced her most recently as being the writer for that as well. So DC's pretty high on her. I'm going to comment on that a little bit later in this review. But the breakdown of the movie is as follows. After splitting with the Joker, Harley Quinn joins superheroes Black Canary, Huntress, and Renee Montoya to save a young girl from an evil crime lord. That's the general gist of the movie, though they really didn't do the best job kind of explaining in the trailers what this movie was really going to be about. And I even think that breakdown is misleading, but I'll get into that a little bit later as well. As far as the cast, we have Margot Robbie back as Harley Quinn. We have Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Helena Bertinelli, a.k.a. Huntress. We have Journey Smollett Bell as Diana Lance, a.k.a. Black Canary. Ewan McGregor as Black Mask. Rosie Perez as Renee Montoya. Chris Messina as Victor Zaz. And Ella Joy Bosco as Cassandra Cain. Just to hit some of the high and low points, my thoughts on the movie is as this, because I know we had a really big discussion, and this is kind of a throwback to what I was talking about with the Facebook group. I kind of put out a poll about who was going to see the movie or who was interested in the movie. And so forth. And it actually spawned this large conversation about this movie before it even dropped, about people's apprehension towards the movie, their thoughts on the film and how it was marketed, and their anticipation level. And it was really all over the board. And it was just like a simple poll, but it sprang out to a much larger conversation. Even with myself, this was a movie going into it. I wasn't like, oh, I have to see this movie. Just for the purposes of, the podcast and me being a content creator. And I do focus all my content on the comic book industry and all the different mediums. I've reviewed all the previous 7 DC EU movies, extended universe movies, so I would continue that by doing that. Now, I haven't done a review on Joker, but it's not really a part of the DC EU. It was a separate thing, but it's also a DC Films movie, so I probably will rent that and actually do a review on that sometime in the near future. You probably will get it because I have so much content already planned out. It will probably be in the next month, maybe or so, but it'll be coming soon. It's on. It's been on home video for a while. I'm just gonna break down and rent the movie. I haven't purchased it yet, so I can at least do a review on it. But yeah, so that was kind of more my pull on doing it. I do these reviews. I enjoy doing the movie reviews because next to comics, my second largest love is movies. Um, so just really that was more my motivating factor on seeing this movie more than anything else. I just did not grab me that way where it's like, oh, I have to see this movie. But I don't mind Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I really enjoyed her in Suicide Squad as the character, so I was down to see more of that. But I had this distinct feeling from seeing the trailers that this was less of a Birds of Prey movie and more a Harley Quinn movie, and I just got the feeling that the Birds of Prey aspect of it was going to be shortchanged. That was my biggest concern going into the movie, and the movie proved me pretty much right on that point. I love the Birds of Prey. I love the original Volume One series that was started by Chuck Dixon, later taken over by Gail Simone. Yeah, I really loved the Birds of Prey in the original iteration of Oracle and Black Canary, and then the team eventually expanded over the years and in the different subsequent volumes. They added people like the Huntress on. Harley Quinn was never a part of it as far as anything that I know, but I didn't read some of the later like New 52 and later versions of Birds of Prey, so I don't know if Harley Quinn might have been associated with the group at some point, but as far as anything I knew, she was not. But that's neither here nor there. That's a nitpick. Um, Going into the movie, just some of my thoughts. I had never seen anything from Kathy Yan as far as her previous works. I had looked her up on IMDb, so she had did some, smaller things, short film, smaller movies. I felt like all in all, as a whole, coming out of the movie, I felt like she did a solid job. I wouldn't shudder or run away from her directing another big, budget movie or comic book related movie. I think she did a pretty good job with what she was given. I think the most disappointing part of the whole movie to me was the script by Christina Hodson. And I know she's a hot name in Hollywood. She was being bantered around, leading up to the release of Bumblebee. A lot of reports and a lot of news that she was attached to a lot of different scripts and a lot of big projects. And then she landed, like I said, a succession of stuff. DC locked her in. And around that time, Bumblebee hit and then got a lot of critical success. They've locked her into 3 movies now. I don't know coming out of this movie, will that change? Because I feel like the biggest problem with the movie was the script by her. You can argue Bumblebee was a good movie, but all in all, Bumblebee, I'm older, I'm 44. When you watch Bumblebee is basically a updated telling of E.T. If you've ever seen the Steven Spielberg movie E.T., it was basically an updated version of that with a robot instead of alien. It's pretty similar in so many like base aspects of it. So I can't even say that she's just such an excellent writer. She took a premise that we've already seen in a movie and kind of made it her own. Does that really make it original? Does it really make her a good writer? It remains to be seen. But I think, like I said, the biggest failing of the movie was the script, not the acting. I felt like the actors did a great job, and they all, sometimes we get these films and we'll be like, okay, this person definitely did it for a paycheck. They kind of phoned it in. I can't say that by any of the actors in this film at all. I felt like they all really were committed to their roles. And again, I think that I don't blame anything a failing for Kathy Yan at all, because I know it's not easy coming from small film to then do like a superhero anti-vigilante, anti-hero kind of film. From that, it has to be hard. And like I said, I felt like she did a serviceable job, and I feel like based upon what I saw, because this was still, depending what you're hearing in my voice talking about the movie at this point, I um I don't. I thought this movie was very entertaining, and I enjoyed it for what it is. But I think my biggest problem is the movie is could have been. I feel like it's decent. It's yeah. I say it's decent, a decent film. But this movie could have been a really great movie if just certain things were tweaked. And I blame more the writing and DC films as a whole as they won't commit to one certain direction one way or another, and I wish they would just make up their mind and quit trying to fast track everything. I think this movie would have worked so much better if it was just focused on Harley Quinn. Even the name Birds of Prey is so misleading. We we don't get that aspect of the team to the very third act of the film, and the characters of Black Canary and Huntress and Renee Montoya all are underserved and underdeveloped in this movie. The whole first half of the movie is a Harley Quinn movie, and then you squeeze in these rushed elements of the Birds of Prey. It was like it was a total afterthought. And I know Margot Robbie's production company produced this movie, so that even more so to me would have made sense for it being a Harley Quinn movie, standalone movie. You could have introduced these characters in it, and it would have been better served of you misleading the public of saying it's a Birds of Prey movie. It's not. It is a Harley Quinn movie. I would have preferred that it would have been the Emancipation of One Harley Quinn featuring the Birds of Prey. I would have preferred that be the name of the movie because that's the movie we got, not the other. Um, so that was a big disappointment. But again, Hodgson is tapped to write a Batgirl script as well as a Flash script. So we'll see, because this movie from the box office that came out from this weekend, the movie kind of underperformed from estimates. Estimates had kind of had this movie projected to do like 45 to 50 million opening. It did like 33, 35 million. I think it only had a budget of about 75 to 80 million, but the marketing budget, they were pushing this really hard leading into the launch of the movie. And again, in the critic screenings that came before the movie was released, a lot of critics were high on the movie. And like I said, I think I'm not saying it is a movie that wasn't pleasant to see. I don't regret watching the movie, going to the theater, watching the movie. I had a pleasant experience. My wife that, comes to all the movies with me, she enjoyed it as well. I would definitely buy it. It's definitely a movie I would watch again and enjoy, hands down. I just think some small tweaks that could have been made here and there that could have made a decent movie, a great movie. And I'm still optimistic coming out of it, despite some of the missteps. I think one of my biggest issues is one of my favorite characters in the DC universe that sprouted from the Bat family is Cassandra Cain. I loved the original Batgirl comic that introduced Cassandra Cain in the comics. Let me look it up now while I'm talking. I should have probably did this in advance, but it was a series done. I just recently had picked up the series in anticipation of the movie coming out. I hadn't read it in years. I think it came out late 90s or early 2000s, if I remember correctly. 2000 to 2006. It was written by, who was it? Written by Scott Peterson, Kelly Puckett, and the artwork was done by Damian Scott. It was a really great series. I trying to see how many trades it ran. They re-released trades. I bought the first one. I think it's 3 trades that cover most of the run of the series. And it was just a really good. She debuted, I think, in No Man's Land. And then she was very successful. She spun out of that, and they kept her around. It looks like this series ran about 37 issues from what I'm seeing. So it's 3 kind of repackaged trades that have about 12 or so issues portrayed. Like I said, I picked up the first one. I love the series. I collected it thoroughly. She's a totally different character from what we got in the movie. They had her be, she was a foster child, a pickpocket. She, they made no reference to her parentage, which Cassandra Cain, if you're unaware, her mother is Lady Shiva and her father is um, I think his name is David Kane. He's like one of the best assassins in the DC universe, and then Lady Shiva's the best martial artist in the um, in the DC universe, and she was pretty much a mute when she's first introduced in the comics, and it was this thing where basically I'm not gonna say maybe she was abused, but she was basically like kind of abused by her father to make her tough and to make her into an assassin, and she kind of only communicated through fighting and violence. She was introduced in No Man's Land as Batgirl or Batwoman or what have you, and she was a mysterious character. Bruce found her, kind of set her up, trained her, and then Oracle, aka Barbara Gordon, kind of mentored her, and um, she became Batgirl. And she had her own series, and like I said, it was a really good series. It was like not people were really a lot of people were talking about it. I loved it. It's just something I connected with the character. Um, she was kind of she in a way kind of reminds you of what was later Damian Wayne before Damian Wayne was came about. Um, but just a really good character. Had her own series. She's bounced around, and I think she's been. I think she went under the name of Black Bat for a while. She was in James Tynion's run on Detective Comics as I think her name was now Orphan. I hadn't kept up in her with her character in years. I've just seen hints, and I was doing a little bit of brushing up research because I wanted to talk about her in this episode. So I do know at one point she was Black Bat. She's Orphan now because I read some of that Tinian run, the first few issues. So I know she goes by that name now. Um, so she's been a constant in the Bat family through all these years when she was first originally introduced, but a drastically different character. This Cassandra Cain couldn't even throw a punch, more or less, kill anybody, or even be threatening as a killer. So that just bothered me because it's a beloved character to me. So that's a personal thing for me. Some people might have never heard of him. You might not know who I'm talking about at this point by me just giving this kind of breakdown and explanation. But a great character that was totally misused. In this movie, it was just a young female pickpocket. It just could have been a nondescript, just regular person. I don't know why they used Cassandra Cain especially for this movie. And if you know nothing about Cassandra Cain, the best way I can kind of describe her from a film that you might have seen, you saw Logan and the girl that played X-23. Minus the claws, that's kind of Cassandra Cain, not what we got in this movie. So that's like a brief synopsis on something that you might have seen that you could liken it to. That's what the character was supposed to be, not what we got, hands down. And another thing that bothered me, since this was done by Margot Robbie's production company, she was in a movie with Will Smith a few years ago called Focus, and where they were like grifters and pickpockets and scam artists, and they really did a great job in that film of like showing that world and showing how smoothly like that whole process was. This kid was the worst pickpocket ever, and they just had her like walking in, bumping into people. Just, it was not believable that she could even pickpocket enough to get in the whole situation that precipitated the whole plot of the movie. So it like that took me out of it as well, because it was like you were already you produced this and you were in a movie where they was like a love letter to like pickpockets and being a grifter, and she's the worst I've ever seen, ever. So it's just that took me out of the movie as well. But that's neither here nor there. Again, these are small things that because she was in a movie and she was one of the characters and she was really good at it, you would have figured that maybe that would have played a part in the movie. in some way that she would have been smoother in it. Those scenes were like even painful to look at because it was like, how would these people not know that she just picked their pocket? It's so obvious she's picking their pocket. But it's neither here nor there. I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna let it go. I'm breathing. Um, but like I said, they could have used any other character than her. Just because it doesn't seem like they're gonna play up the point of her parentage at all. But again, the other little issue that I had was, and I don't want to sound this come off wrong. I am a big fan of Rosie Perez. I've liked her for years. She was a dancer turned actress, kind of like Jennifer Lopez, but not with the same level of success. She's been doing movies since Spike Lee's "Do the Right Thing," I think was the first thing I've ever seen her in. And she was in White Men Can't Jump, and she's had a long career of television movies over the continuing decades since then. I don't know why in the world they casted her as Renee Montoya, and I felt like they did not need Renee Montoya in this movie at all. And then I felt like they miscasted her because she was so much older than the other female characters. And Renee, from all the comics that I read, would have been around the same age as all the other characters, not like 10, 15, maybe 20 years older than them in some cases. So that made no sense to me. And the character was so off brand, and she's an iconic character. Her and Harley Quinn were two characters that started in the Batman animated series that transitioned to comics and became big things in comics. And Renee Montoya her character's been used in, I think, the Nolan Dark Knight trilogy of movies as well. Like, she is a beloved character, and they just mishandled such a good character, and they touched on aspects that made the character, like she's struggled with alcoholism. They touched on that briefly, but didn't explain it at all. There was this whole big thing about, they threw out representation in this movie. They mentioned in a voiceover that she had a girlfriend. Then they really didn't do too much with it. Why bring it up? And I felt like those were elements, if you really weren't going to take the time to commit and flesh them out and give that character the time needed to kind of flesh out their character, that those things mattered or you cared about them. They were just like throwaway things. So there was like, if you were a fan of that character, it was just kind of like they were poking the bear, just like poking us with, like, teasing us of aspects, and none of it was followed up or even elaborated on. It was just like throwaway that I would have rather you had just not use those elements, and it just felt like they were thrown in to be like, oh wait, she's a lesbian and she had a girlfriend that she's broke up with now, and then you see the girlfriend, and then it's never really fully explained. And the only reason, and how it's shot and how it's shown in a movie, you wouldn't have known outside of you getting a voiceover about it right before the girlfriend was introduced, and it never was kind of spoken on that much again through the rest of the movie. That just bothered me. If you're gonna have inclusion, and do it right, not just do it to say, oh, we checked the box and we had a gay woman in the movie and our girlfriend, her ex-girlfriend, we checked that box. I'm gonna let that go. And it's a character that has such a rich history and backstory that I felt like it was squandered and thrown away in this movie as kind of afterthoughts. It felt like they could have gone with like an actress like Michelle Rodriguez, Jessica Henwick, or even Gina Carano to kind of play that role of, and that would have embodied what Montoya's character really was. And they had her in this film be kind of, she wasn't in the inner circle, and they kind of had, like, the Gotham PD was like, treated her dirty. They stole her work and took credit for it. It was like a lot of bits of kind of what felt like man bashing in the script here, and it was unrealistic because she was close to Gordon and was in his inner circle of the Gotham PD. So it was totally just misrepresented how she was valued as a cop in the force, totally. And that bothered me because it felt like slight male bashing, and I wanted to see her being a respected cop, not like a joke or someone that other men just bullied and stole work from, because Renee Montoya would never stand for that. She ended up being the new Question, for God's sake. She's tough as nails, so that just was a total misrepresentation of the character. I understand certain times you have to change things for film, but it just was wrong. It just Cassandra's Cain characterization was just wrong, and Renee Montoya's characterization was just wrong. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. It was just wrong, and it was just a total disrespect to the character. And these should be about character and story first. And they just that's where I'm so frustrated. They try to depart so wildly from what make these characters great. You know, the comics that they're based on. Feige knows over at Marvel, he might change things, but the character will still be in the general spirit of what the character was in the comics. It might just have to be rearranged based on their plans or how they're handling it, but they're not so unrecognizable to be like, no, that character is nothing like what I know that character to be. But I'm gonna let that go. Still, I thought the few action scenes that were in the movies were done well. They brought in Chad Stahelski from John Wick. Well, he's directed or co-directed all the John Wick movies. He's directed the past two on his own, and I think he's directing the fourth that's going to be coming out next year. But they brought him in to punch up some of the fight scenes. I thought they were entertaining. I thought I would have hoped there would have been more action in them, but they brought him in towards the end for reshoots. But I thought the fight scenes were fun. It matched the energy of the overall energy of the movie, so they were a good fit. So I can't complain about that there. Like I said, I felt like all the actors on some of the high notes, because I feel like that this might have trended a little bit more negative or derogatory than I wanted it to come off as. Because like I said, this was definitely a fun movie, and I would watch it again. I wouldn't rank it at the top of my list for my DC movies, but I definitely think, and if you were a fan of Suicide Squad or you like bits of Suicide Squad, if you like that or thought it was at least a decent movie, I feel like it's slightly better than Suicide Squad. I wouldn't say this is the best DC EU movie of them all by any stretch of the imagination, just for the problems that I identified in this review. But I do want to say this. I feel like Journey Smollett Bell as Black Canary was a pleasant surprise, as well as Mary Elizabeth Winstead's Huntress. They just did a cringe thing in the script when they first when they all got together, that they kind of did with her that I didn't like, but I'm glad it was just one like little segment of a scene, and then the writing kind of settled out. They kind of had her be like overly like, I'm angry, I'm not angry, kind of like Christian Bale Batman voice kind of thing. It was kind of like on that level, kind of cringe. But I got, they settled it down, and I kind of like where they landed with the character, where she was ultra intense and serious. And then playing off the other characters, she was like they're a straight man to their comedy, so then it made her funnier. So that worked. I came out of this movie wanting a HBO Max or potentially DC Universe Birds of Prey show from where they left this film with the Birds of Prey, because we really didn't get the Birds of Prey in full glory. We get a very scene towards the end of the movie where I feel like it's set up to where they can go back and flesh out these characters, because outside of the sloppy introductions they did in this movie, the movie kind of failed them in that way. So with that being said, where I would rate this movie out of my 10-point scale, for me it would fall as a 6.75 out of 10. So on my rating scale, that's like a red box it. So this is one you can definitely wait for on home video. Now, I would say if you're just bored and you want to go to the movies to check out a superhero movie, I don't think you'll be disappointed. You'll feel like you at least got your money's worth. If you're a huge fan of Harley Quinn and you like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, it's worth going to see at the theater. And like I said, if you like Suicide Squad and you want to see something a little bit better, like I said, it's slightly above. I think if I remember correctly, I gave like Suicide Squad like a 6 or 6.5. This is, like I said, slightly better. Give it a 6.75 out of 10. I didn't feel comfortable giving it like a 7 out of 10. But 6.75 out of 10, I think, is definitely a fair assessment of this movie. And if you check those boxes that I just mentioned, then it's worth checking out at the theater. I don't think you would totally be disappointed if you fall anywhere outside of that or below being one of those type of individuals. You can wait till it's on home video, and it's a perfect kind of like streaming, catch it on sale at the end of the year for $5 or $10, kind of pick up and add to your collection. And it's like a fun, I like that visually it was a very pretty, striking movie. Visually it was bright, vibrant. They really played that up. Those action scenes with the play of the colors and the cinematography really works together, and it gives it a different energy that we haven't seen in the previous movies. It's reminiscent of Suicide Squad in some ways in that way, but done better in every possible aspect except for the script, because they both had choppy, not horrible scripts, but not good scripts. Let's say that, because we're going to end on a positive note. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode. Definitely check out the Facebook group. Again, it is facebook.com/groups/the Savant Society. Also, check out my store on Teespring. I have the links on the homepage. Just click on the store and it'll take you over to our merchandise store. If you haven't seen it already on Instagram, Savant Society member Brittany, she has bought one of the new t-shirt designs. We a couple of weeks ago we came out with two neat t-shirt designs by Eric Griggs. He's the designer that helped Heath with all the Serial at Midnight merchandise. I hooked up with him because I liked the work he did, and he came up with 3 designs. It's a really cool one for Savant Society that he did that Brittany brought. I got the picture up on Instagram and on Facebook, so if you follow me either place, you should see it. It's really cool. Got multiple color options, and then we did 2 other designs. I posted a picture of them, I think, on Facebook, on Instagram as well, of what all 3 designs look like. That one seems to be the popular one. Someone else in the group also told me that they've ordered one. They haven't posted pictures yet. So when I get pictures from you guys, when you buy the t-shirts, if you post it, if you hashtag it on social media with hashtag Comic Book Savant, I'll get it and I'll retweet it and spotlight it. Or if you send the picture to me, then I'll post it on social media if you're okay with that, to show off the designs. I appreciate all your guys' support. It's super important, like I talked about in a couple episodes ago, about where the direction of the show is going and where I'm trying to take it. So like by buying the t-shirts, joining the Patreon, becoming a Patreon supporter, all those kind of things help make it possible with how things I explained have been shifting. That support is even more important now more than ever. But I know everyone financially can't help support the show in that way, but you can retweet. You can do like a one-time donation. You can follow me on social media, join the group. It's other avenues, and yet you can give input to the show to help make the show better. So don't think that everyone, because I know everyone's financial situation is different. So not everyone can be, hey, here's a I can buy a t-shirt or do this and that. But whatever you can do goes a long way and help expand and grow the show. And I appreciate everything you all do. On that note, that's all I have for you guys. Until next week, you guys take care, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.